Hey, everybody, welcome once again into another edition of the Brotherly Glove podcast. I am your host, Kyle Fisher, alongside my brother, Johnny, two brothers from Philly talking all things Philly sports. We've seen it all, been a part of it all, been at the stadium for it all. South Philly was our life for a long time. We've seen the best and the worst of the players and coaches to come through this town, the ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and forgot about this the last couple episodes, Johnny. We've been to more back-to-back Super Bowls than the Kelsey brothers. It doesn't get much more in tune than that. Not only are we diehard fans, but 30 years combined working in sports media, giving you our unique perspective on everything Philly sports. Today, we're talking about the Phillies infield. If you haven't heard it already, when you're done with this one, make sure you go back. We did a preview for the starting pitchers and the relief pitchers. Our pitching preview is already in the books. Talked a lot about Aaron Nola and Johan Duran, who had great outings today in spring for the Phils. Today, we will dive into everything for the infielders and the catchers. A returning familiar face behind the dish here for another 3 years. A first baseman who, so far in his first taste of USA baseball, feels like a man on a mission. A platoon at second. A guy facing more adversity than he ever has over at third, and a shortstop who finished top 5 MVP but didn't get back on the WBC roster. Well, we're going to give you anything and everything that we're expecting from that group this year. First off, Johnny, how are we feeling about these Phils?
Spring training, the first couple of weeks have given me a little bit of a rosier outlook on things. Not to sound so fatalist with that, but the first couple of weeks, the things I've seen have been good so far.
Well, that is good. A home run from Alec Bohm, speaking of the infield, a hot start from one Bryson Stott, really relevant for our discussion here today. But ultimately, like I teased, no changes in this group from last year to this year. We're going to get to the outfield where a lot of changes happened. We talked about how they revamped the bullpen, but the biggest position group that there is outside of the bullpen, these 5-6 guys, no new faces. Is that a good thing for this club?
In this case, yeah, I think it is. You mentioned Harper and the mission he's going to be on. We talked about him with his not elite shirt. We're ready for the season he's going to put up. Trey Turner, you just surprised me with the top 5 MVP. I didn't realize that. But I like the other guys. Really good defense from Stott and Bohm. I don't think he's going to be a superstar, but if he can have one of the better Alec Bohm seasons, he's a great guy to have there. And he's improved his defense, and having Sosa to hit lefties, I think it's a really good infield.
Yeah, it's funny how the sour notes from a lot of fans out there, so the running it back rhetoric that keeps coming up. Well, when you're a team that wins 96 games, shouldn't you be damn near running it back, right? Like, I know that the lapses have happened come postseason, and we're talking rings, not regular season and divisional championships in Philadelphia. But when you have a team that good, you shouldn't be worried about the potential of running it back. Like, their fault. We'll get to it a little bit later, but they almost had a moment where they did make a major change, and their fallback plan was, I guess we'll just run out a 96 win roster once again. No big deal. I'm not too worried about it. And like you said, the guys that they have playing major roles in there, if Bohm, I know he had a lot of injuries last season, if he can get back to 15 homers and 90 plus RBIs with pushing an 800 OPS. I know he hasn't been there since his first season in the bigs, but if he can get close to that number again while putting up 35 to 45 doubles like people in Philly had become accustomed to, then you're looking at a pretty solid group, especially comparing it to other teams across the league. I mentioned it in the top. The big signing of the offseason when it came to this group and this crop was the return of one JT Realmuto. He will be 35 shortly, so his 35, 36, 37 age seasons will be spent in red pinstripes. There was a moment where he may not have come back, but the Phillies made sure to bring him back, the best catcher available on the free agent market. And we talked about a lot in the pitching section and in previous episodes about how his impact goes well beyond what he does at the plate. It's not only what he does to control the running game behind the dish, but it's what he does with those pitchers. Well, we talked all about the pitchers and how excited we were for them, how excited they are for the return of JT. But he's still going to come up in that order. He's still one of 9 every single time that lineup is written. And he had the worst OPS of possibly his career, at least almost in a decade, I believe, John. So
yeah,
what are your thoughts on JT?
It's all about managing expectations. I said beforehand, I know you and I talked about what was the most pressing thing or the most important thing of the offseason. I said it was getting Schwarber back in the fold, and you said Realmuto because of the lack of other catching options in the organization or available otherwise. And my thinking was it sounded like with all the reporting that the cost was going to be right around what it ended up being. And my thing was I'd love to have Realmuto back if that cost doesn't prohibit them from doing something else somewhere else. We had the flirt, which we'll get to, and flirting with another big free agent signing. But this came after that fell through. So this didn't prohibit them from doing that. In fact, it seemed to be the opposite. They put JT on hold to see if they could do some other stuff. So and we know there weren't really a whole lot of spots open on this roster. So I'm fine with it as long as the expectations are proper. In his first 4 seasons with the Phillies, his OPS was over 800, but the last 4 have been 820, 762, 751, and 700. And we talk about last year being a disappointing season. That's 736 over the course of the 3 seasons. If we say that's a disappointing season, and we know that he's always behind the plate, he posts up. There have only been 17 instances ever of a catcher 35 years old playing 120 games with a 700 OPS. Like, we're talking about 700 OPS being an achievement at his age. 700 OPS on the nose last year was a big disappointment in the continuation of a downward trend. And Yadier Molina he did it 6 years ago. A bunch of guys did it from 2002 to 2012. Say what you will about that era.
Right.
Before that, it was 1988, and a bunch of those, 3 of them were Carlton Fisk, who was a freak. So this is a really essentially getting JT Realmuto's season last year at his age this year is really, really rare. And I guess we're hoping he replicates that. I mean, the idea that he's going to push back, closer to the 750, 800 range, I think is probably unrealistic. But we know, you mentioned it, it's hard to quantify, but there is more value than just looking at, home runs and OPS. He brings a lot to this team. And if it didn't prohibit them from doing something else that would have made them better, I'm glad to have him back.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about the consistency that he brings behind the dish, right? Not only the preparation is heralded league wide. If you've ever seen him, played against him, played with him, worked with him in the offseason, anybody who's ever spoken to this guy talks about how smart he is when it comes to putting together a game plan, how much he takes care of his body, how much he wants to make an impact on the field, even if he's struggling in other places. I believe it wasn't today. It was a recent spring training game, though. He talked about he made an adjustment late in the season last season at the dish, and his entire focus offensively in the offseason was making sure that he could replicate that more consistently to start the year, as opposed to feeling lost for a little while. He did not use the word lost. That's my words. Feeling lost early in the season and then really having to make a big adjustment mid-season, which guys have talked about that being a challenge in the past. He's working on that, but the catching position itself has turned mostly across the league into more of a platoon position. You have 2 guys who are kind of splitting time there. This guy is still a 120, 130 game catcher this late into his career. You mentioned it. Only a few guys have had a 700 OPS playing that many games behind the dish. This is an invaluable trait. The health and consistency that he brings to the team, that he brings to the lineup, the clubhouse, and of course, as we mentioned, the pitching staff.
But it's let me ask you this. It's also one of those things where at age 35, it becomes it's going to become tougher and tougher to keep catching that many games. Like, this is no knock on Realmuto himself. Maybe there's individuals that buck trends all the time. Maybe he's one of them. But as every year goes on and it gets tougher and tougher to catch that many games, part of the issue is, like we said, there weren't a lot of options behind him. So you mentioned that a bunch of places, almost every team is going to almost a straight platoon just to keep guys fresh. If Realmuto can't catch 120 games, are we even worse off? Because we're talking about, we got to bring this guy back for $15 million a year, and it's the 700 OPS that is quantifiable, but the stuff behind the plate and in the pitch calling, in the game calling, that's not quantifiable. If we don't think the guys behind him are able to fill those shoes, then we could be looking at some trouble over these next couple of years if he's not able to keep coming out that often, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's something.
Am I being a Negadelphian here?
No, I think you're right. I mean, now
I'm hearing it out loud. Maybe I am.
I'm not a big, like, once the contract is signed, I don't really care about the money. John Middleton at some point has, when the opportunity rises to get a certain caliber player, will ignore the money as well. He's shown it. So I don't think that the money is part of the factor for me, even if he struggles, right? You brought him back for a reason. You got him in the building. It costs what it costs. If you have to bring somebody else in because he gets hurt or can't stay on his in a squat position for 120 games anymore, you figure that out. And the one benefit that I would say is, not only do they have the two guys that they have behind him right now don't really inspire anything from the offensive side, but the way that the pitchers and JT and the coaching staff talk about Garrett Stubbs and Rafael Marchand, and the way that they talk about what they've been able to learn from JT, I don't think some of those intangibles face a massive drop off if he isn't able to play as much. Now, the offense, even though we just talked about it being a down year, probably takes an even more significant drop off if they're forced to go with those two guys for an extended period. Although 2 years ago when he was injured, I did put a nice little piece together on how they did carry the load. They actually had a pretty good, I think their numbers were right in line with what Realmuto had done prior to being hurt. So they kind of kept things even keeled. Not that you can guarantee that to happen, but Marchand has shown flashes in the past. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that translates, if that is a thing of the past, or if he can find that again. He is still in his mid 20s. He's, I think Stubbs is on the other side of 30 now, but Marchand still has some time to grow, and having a guy like Realmuto to continue to help him grow those intangibles in the building, even if he can't hold himself up. That's just, to me, that those intangibles don't automatically go away if he just because he's catching 100 instead of 120.
Yeah.
I love that note about, man, look at some of these names on this list real quick. Hold on. The Jorge Posada, AJ Pierzynski at age 35, Yadier Molina. That dude, I feel like he could still be catching for he was great. Pudge obviously was like the catcher of my era. Jason Varitek. Benito Santiago, my goodness. He played forever, I feel like. He's age 37 in 2002. He probably played like another 6 or 7 years himself. Oh, man. But they have who they have, right? And I think the one thing that is people need to realize is that there's, like, say JT struggles a lot and Marchand and Stubbs are also not holding up their end offensively. You're going to have the defense. You're going to have the ability to control the running game still. All three of them are still good behind the dish. It's not like there's teams out there who are like, we have a bunch of catchers. Yeah, sure. Let's put one on the trade market, see what we can get. It is maybe the thinnest position, especially from an offensive standpoint across the league. Yep. So overpay whatever you want. I know, like, again, I'm a big fan of, especially in a sport like baseball where there's no cap. It's not my money, right? They got him in the building. It costs what it costs. And if they need to add somebody, great. But there's not people out there that you can just add at this position. It's a thin position to get somebody consistent defensively is a struggle. To get somebody consistent offensively is even more of a struggle. Like Cal Raleigh's an outlier. JT was an outlier before that. It's like those two and Will Smith are the only guys who have really been and Salvador Perez, can't ignore him.
Yeah.
But it's like those four guys are in one tier, and then everybody else, it's almost like the next tier is blank, and then it jumps down below that. So it's you live with the result. You know what you're going to get from him. I think that if people, like you said, temper their expectations, it should feel good to have that guy back. And I know that the starting pitching staff, especially, is very happy.
Yeah, and another way, I don't know if you've seen much about this. Another way the catcher position is changing is you're seeing teams come out and say they're going to call the game from the dugout. Mm-hmm. Have you read a lot about this?
Yeah.
With the Giants' new manager coming from University of Tennessee, but Miami's going to do it too. There's a bunch of teams that are saying we're going to do it somewhat, we're going to do it a lot, we're going to do it all the time, and they're doing that in an effort to take some burden off catchers who are, they're not asked to do any more than before. I think it's just a realization of what they're being asking these guys to do on a daily basis. So I think that's interesting that there is a big change at that position, like over a number of years, and it's still going. It's coming quick in other ways.
And it's funny, for a guy who never really experienced the ABS system, you talk to any pitcher in that locker room, and they're like, "No, for the challenges, JT's got that. We're not a single Phillies pitcher is expected to tap their head this year." So that should be interesting.
That's what teams should do. Don't let pitchers do that.
Yeah. Oh, who was? Man, I wish I remembered it, but I saw a clip of a guy, pitcher, minor league guy too, throws a pitch, challenges right away, and the catcher went, "No."
Yeah, try to get the ump to wave it off.
That was a good one. It's a nice, fun spring training moment. But we teased it, and let's get to it, Johnny. So the JT was kind of the fallback plan, right? He was the ex waiting in the wings to see how the new girl was gonna work out, right? Like so Phillies had a late offseason opportunity to potentially go get Bo Bichette. Who knows if they were used by Bo Bichette's camp? I don't think Bo himself was doing anything like that. Phillies felt like they had a deal done around $30 million for 7 years to bring in $30 million a season rather for 7 years to bring Bo Bichette in and be a part of this infield group. A guy who is an incredible all-around hitter. Played obviously was batting cleanup in the World Series for the Blue Jays just this past season, and obviously that doesn't end up working out. Now he goes up north and signs what is essentially a 1-year deal with the New York Mets. It's a 3-year with a couple player options. So likely if all things go well, he'll be back on the market next season. But Bo Bichette, multi-time All-Star, multi-time American League hits leader, was almost joining this team that we already said is an electric group here in the infield. How'd you feel about that? Is it still rub you the wrong way, especially seeing that he said he's excited to get booed when he's in Philadelphia, when he's on foul territory recently?
No, he seems like a kid that would be perfect for one of these markets. No, I think I try not to get too high, too low about this stuff. It was exciting that there was an opportunity, and it stunk when it seemed like they missed it. And again, I said at the time, not because I think they did anything wrong. And like you just pointed out, I don't think Bichette was using us with no intention of coming here. It seemed like they had an agreement, and the Mets came and did something totally different that went way above. So, and in a different way. So, no, I think the Phillies were doing the right thing. My question is where he would have played. I don't know how much you read or what reporting was done, or if anyone said that. But where do you know where the Phillies are going to play him, or where would you have played him if they signed him?
So there was no official reporting. All the signs seemed to point towards third base. It's 2 off seasons in a row where the team has. It's been noted and reported multiple reliable sources that they kicked the tires and saw what was available in an Alec Bohm trade. So to me, if they brought him in, obviously it wouldn't have been an immediate flip of Alec, but it seems like a no-brainer that if you're exploring trades for this guy and the other guy could potentially play that position, that would be the natural fit. Personally, I would have tried to put him at second base. I think that even though he struggled as a shortstop, I think that you see a lot of times where the shortstop to second base shift is an easier transition for guys, especially defensively. Even Bryson Stott, who everybody raved about at shortstop his rookie season, when he shifted over to second base, all of his defensive metrics went up as well. Trey Turner, when he was at second base with the Dodgers, his numbers went up significantly. Yes, guys can go the other way too. Like A-Rod had a great transition from short to third, but typically or at least in recent memory, when I've seen
shortstop in the league.
Right. Yeah, it's he was going to be great no matter where you put him, but he was. I felt like he was a better fit at second base, and that's not taking anything away from Bryson Stott. But when you have what essentially boiled down to near the end of the season a platoon at one position and a guy who's ready to play every single day, and you need right-handed pop, well, one guy's lefty, one guy's righty. One guy's in a platoon, one guy's not. So to me, it would have been an easy shift to put him into second base. Maybe they would have let it play out, but if you're asking me what I would have done, that's what I would have done.
Yeah, and you could break down a whole bunch of stuff, and I think in a lesser year for Bohm, the numbers were closer, but Alec Bohm's just a better hitter than Bryson Stott. And right. I think if you're bringing Bichette in primarily for offense, he's not like – it's not going to be his natural position, but obviously he needs to move off his natural position. It seems like he'd be better. He'd be better equipped, especially in the short term, to handle second base. And if the two guys you're deciding between, the lesser hitter is at second base, then that would seem to be it for me. So unless they had a Bohm trade lined up that made sense and got some salary relief or brought in, a flyer or something else, sometimes you have to make uncomfortable decisions, and obviously they were willing to do something uncomfortable if they were willing to go this far with Bichette. And yeah, I don't know what they would have done, but that's what, if I were in charge and they just said, okay, you have your roster and now you also have Bo Bichette, that's what I would have done.
Yeah, I think that would have made the most sense. I would have understood if they went the other way. Like you talked about, the Bo makes more money. He's in the final year of his contract, whereas Stott has 2 years left. It gives you some flexibility there. Stott, the better defender. So there's value there, obviously. I think it just because I'm picking second base doesn't mean that they necessarily move on from Stott either, right? It could just be, right. Hey, guess what, man? You're our super utility guy. And then they figure out something with Edmundo Sosa, who's also in the final year of his career. So his contract rather.
Wow, calling it early.
Well, hopefully he goes out a winner. It's oh man. Whoa, sorry about that, Edmundo. Anyway, yeah, I think that would have been the most ideal way to go. But knowing that they have explored trades for Alec Bohm the last 2 off seasons, that's the logical place where I think they would have gone.
Yeah, and even playing a new position, I still think he would have just been, man, what a jolt to the lineup.
Oh yeah,
almost a career 300 hitter, career OPS over 800. He had some big homer seasons, but last year, even in a really good hitting season, hit 18. So not a huge power threat, but slugging. He slugged almost over 480 last year. He's had some big slug years in the past. We know he's dealt with some injuries that keep him in and out of the lineup, but that would have been a nice addition to this lineup, especially like you said, that the thing everybody seems to be looking for, and the thing the Phillies really need is whether it's like real pop or just some professional hitting from the right side. He would have brought that.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to boo him 13 times this year.
Hell yeah.
Next year.
Yeah, right. That's what I love all the people who are, oh, dude, no, he goes to New York. I was like, dude, he signed I know it's not a 1 year, right? He's going to get – I look at it like this. If he's good, then he's a free agent again next year, and you can go ahead and sign him to that long-term deal. Yep. And he got a nice payday and still ended up where he was going to get a long-term deal potentially. And if he stinks, then he stinks for your rival, and they're going to pay him $42 million the season after because he's definitely picking up that option. So,
yep.
It's to me, it's obviously it stinks to lose out on a guy of that caliber, but all things considered, 1 year delay, all right, great. Let's
Yeah.
see him.
And we've got guys in those spots. Yeah, it could be, maybe it's a better fit or a better timing next year.
Yeah, maybe he gets his kinks out at third base, making a bunch of errors for the Mets, and then he can come down if Bohm moves on and play third base for the Phillies.
Yep.
Well, another guy who could potentially play third base for the Phillies after this season, maybe if he bangs the door down this season and things don't go Alec Bohm's way, could be up as early as 2026. The Phillies' top prospect, Aidan Miller, right-hander, some pop, plenty of speed, a solid glove over at shortstop last year at the Triple-A level. They have talked offseason. Dave Dombrowski said on a recent interview on 94.1 WIP here in Philadelphia that they are focused on mostly playing him on that side of the infield. So shortstop and third base will be where he focuses. They said they don't want to throw too much at him at once, but they are comfortable moving him to second base and getting him some time over there as well. But to me, if he's staying at shortstop and third, that's to either slide in when Alec Bohm is after this season, and maybe that's if there wasn't already clear signs based on the last two off seasons that they're ready to move on from Alec Bohm after this season, or if Bohm is great and they decide to extend him, it could be moving Trey Turner off of his position. So before we get into the discussion about potentially moving Trey Turner, what are your thoughts on Aidan Miller? I know he hasn't been in spring yet, dealing with some lower back tightness, but what have you liked from the kid so far?
I mean, I'm just going to go off of what other people. I don't want to get out of my lane, so I'm going to go off what other people say. And Keith Law writes for The Athletic. I'm just going to grab a couple sentences that he wrote there. I'm not going to read, like this is story time, but a couple things that stood out to me. I mean, I know Miller's stock has risen, and he was a high prospect anyway. I think it's interesting that Painter and Crawford. It's an age thing, obviously, but Painter and Crawford are going to be on the major league team to start the year, but Miller's the number one prospect. At the very beginning of his write-up, he said he's going to push the Phillies into making some hard decisions about their middle infield before this year is out. So that's either, just like we talked about, the obvious, if things go as they have typically gone for the players in the fold, then, if Miller's knocking down the door, it seems like Bryson Stott is the guy that he'd replace, or the guy you'd want to try to find an answer for. Or to make some, he just says middle infield, and top 5 MVP finisher and 300 hitter Trey Turner is at shortstop, and you hinted at it, and I know I've mentioned it before. So I just thought that was interesting. That's a strong line. Keith doesn't pull punches. He's very he's not doing it to be a hot taker. He doesn't mind saying what he believes, and it's his job to believe that. He also said he's at least a plus defender at shortstop now, and has boosted his game speed to the point where that's plus as well, which you were, raise your eyes at 59 stolen bases last year on an 80%. So pretty damn good. And he wraps it up by saying there's a good chance that by July 1st, he'll be the best choice for shortstop at Citizens Bank Park. So those are really strong. And so I'm not saying that to have a discussion about what Keith says or the shortstop thing necessarily. I will, but the fact that a person who's been doing this for this long and doesn't have a reason to say those things if he doesn't believe them feels that strongly about the potential in this kid, that feels great, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, especially if he thinks that he could be the shortstop, right? You have a guy who's a star who worked really hard to improve his defense and get back on the positive side when it comes to a lot of the defensive metrics. Defensive run saved, he had one of the biggest swings in the history of the infield for that metric. He went from a minus 14 defensive run saves to plus 2 last season. We were talking all off season last year, they have to move this guy off of this position. You have an issue in the outfield, shove this guy out there, man. Come on, right? To me, that is very encouraging if he is confident enough in him and the way that he's progressed that he feels like he could push an established superstar who's making $300 million off of the position that he's entrenched in. Excuse me.
So I was excited to read that, and that makes me really I'm really anticipating watching him play and see what he does at the beginning of the year in the minor leagues.
So I have a question for you.
Yep.
When it comes to Aidan Miller, what would he have to be? Let's focus on him first.
Yep.
What would he have to be doing at the minor league level for you to be like, Phillies, Dombrowski, find a place for this guy? What would he be needing to do by when for you to be like, I've seen enough, get this guy up here?
I mean, I'd want to give it 2 months. I think he's played 8 games above AA. I'd want to give it 2 months for sure before I even start thinking about it. I'm not like counting down every day, but I think, Memorial Day, see what the kid's doing. And especially if he's hitting, I mean, I want to pull up what his second half numbers were. Keith said he made a pretty concerted effort at the All-Star break to change something in his swing. 15% line drive rate before the break, 24% after the break. And then 307, 443, 511 in the second half of the season last year.
Yeah.
Like that's if he does that, it's over. You find a spot for him.
Right.
But if 443 is wild. But if he's doing even some of that, if he's batting 300, if he's slugging 500, you want that guy in your lineup. And if he's holding his own defensively, then maybe you do have to make a really tough decision. But it could be the same thing of you find ways, you find a spot for a player like that. But I'd say if he's batting 275 or if he's 300 or more, then I think the Phillies are going to need a guy like that. People almost don't hit 300 anymore, so that might be time to recalibrate that a little bit. But
right.
I just think if he's not looking lost, right? Even if he's showing one of those skills, if he's got a high on base or he's slugging pretty well and not booting the ball at whatever position he's playing, and he's handling them trying to get him comfortable and some reps at different positions, then unless everybody in the infield is making it so that we're not asking for someone else, then I'd be putting it on Miller that if he at the end of 2 months, if he's doing any one of those 3 things, I'm trying to find a spot for him.
So you kind of touched on it. The other thing you have to consider is if Bryson Stott looks like he did at the end of last season, if Alec Bohm looks like he did 2 seasons ago when he hit 20 homers, 44 doubles, and 97 RBIs, if those guys look like that to start the year, are you forcing him in there, or is it like we need to see some struggles at the major league level before we're just going to shove the young kid into a potentially an uncomfortable situation?
I don't want to wait to see. No, I mean, I guess it depends. If they're all really good, then I'm not taking what. But I can't imagine there's going to be a thing where let's not say all 9, he's not going to catch, but 8 spots where everybody's getting all-star votes. Right. There's going to be somewhere, and if the kid's playing really well, then I think obviously organizations build teams the way we're talking about. You think about where to put players, but when push comes to shove and we're talking about a window and we're talking about the age of these players and how long this group has together, it's not much more. We haven't won the World Series in this iteration. If Aidan Miller is playing really well and is ready for the major leagues, unless there's absolutely no spot for him, then you bring him up and you make. Yeah, we could come up with any theoretical, right? But if there's some spot where we're looking for improvement, you figure out how to use Aidan Miller to fill that spot, whether it's him or some movement around.
I like it. Anything specific, like if I think Stott, we kind of touched on it, right? To me, unless he looks like he did at the end of the season where he was hitting darn near 300 those last 2 months with an increased walk rate and a decreased fly ball rate, more line drives. Like if he looks like that from the jump and he starts looking like the guy they envisioned as the leadoff hitter of the future.
Yeah, future batting champ.
Right. But other than that, I'm probably, if Miller is as impressive as or looks as impressive as we mentioned, the possibility of. Other than that, I think that's an easy choice. For Bohm, it's a little tougher because he he's not a guy who easily slides into a bench role, right? He plays two positions, one of them okay, I guess, and he's gotten better at it, but like one okay. What would Alec Bohm need to be doing the first 2 months of the season for you to be like, all right, just give me Aidan Miller, man? Or do you want to you choose how you want to phrase it, either that way or like, what would he need to be doing for you to say, well, you ain't replacing Alec Bohm,
right? I mean, I don't have like numbers in mind, but we know he's been. We know this is not necessarily a repeatable skill, but maybe some guys are just, their temperature's a little lower in pressure situations. But he's going to be batting fourth or fifth. It seems almost assured, right? And that's going to be the first test, because we're all talking about who's going to be the cleanup hitter behind Harper.
Right.
We could talk a lot about lineup protection. I think that myth has kind of been busted. I don't think it means nothing, but I also don't think hey, just drop this guy in there, and then, this guy's numbers go like this. But if we're having that discussion at all, I mean, I don't even want to think about, what his numbers might be on his stat sheet. But if we're still having a conversation in mid-May about who's going to bat cleanup in this lineup, I'm not saying that Aidan Miller should come up and bat cleanup, but that's probably an indictment on Alec Bohm's performance at that point, right? So, I would say for any of these guys, if there's any kind of defensive lapses or, come back to earth, whatever, if things don't look good defensively, I don't think that's going to be the case for the guys we're talking about. But, I don't know what it would be. I mean, just big spots, low slugging, striking out too much. If he's chasing pitches, I don't think he's necessarily that kind of guy. I think it's more about Miller. I think if you're not ready to start the season with him, like it should be. It's one of those things. I think you know it when you see it. Like, Miller will either be kicking down the door, or we will be desperate to find someone to replace player X at whatever spot.
I think that's a good way to look at it. The one thing I'd say is, I'd caution people, and we're talking about a very short period of time. I understand that. Before I say that, the kid got drafted in 2023. He's 22 years old. Like, we're talking about jumping levels rapidly, right? From rookie ball through up to getting to AAA. Well, every level that he's jumped, he has struggled to start when jumping up to that next level. Now, you mentioned Lehigh Valley, only 7 or 8 games, like not really a true test. But when he first moved from rookie to high A, it was a struggle. And then once he got his footing and got going, he took off. And then they moved him to double A, and he struggled. And then he got his feet underneath him and took off. I would say that I personally would hope that he is in a position where he's kicking the door down. As opposed to, like, because you said potentially 2 options. I don't think you rush him up because you're desperate to fill a spot, because you have seen that trend of him struggling. So, like, I would hate to throw him in a spot where, like, we're desperate. Stott is underperforming. Bohm is underperforming. X player. I hate to name guys by name, but like X players underperforming. We need you to come help us, Aidan. And then he comes up and struggles, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, who the hell is this guy? Right? Like, knowing how Philadelphia fans are. I would caution people that, just like we've said with other young guys, with Painter in our preview and Crawford in other episodes, you got to give him some time. Even if he is breaking the door down, you still got to give him some time. But I wouldn't do it if he's having a decent start to the year and other people are also are underperforming. I would wait until he was at that point where it was like, okay, what else do you have to prove down there? Let's just get this kid up and find a way to get him in the lineup.
That's the ideal situation. I know we've talked before about with people were talking about Crawford last year and not wanting to come up and have him platoon or play every couple of days. I think in this case, if you talk to, and I don't know anything about Miller's personality and how the organization feels about how he'd handle different situations, but there could also be a thing where, imagine a guy's on the IL for 2 or 3 weeks, right? Like, maybe he's not beating, and I don't want to say you lower the bar, but the first thing you're looking for is we can't keep this kid off our team anymore.
Yeah.
After that, if it's, and we're talking about like, I think there's degrees to it. It's not just, we wish Stott was better. Well, we better just call it Miller, or we wish, someone was getting more hits. Let's just bring the kid up. I think it's, hey, if maybe he's not the kicking down the door status, but if he's playing well and somebody is really not playing well or goes on the IL, maybe that's an opportunity to let him play for 2 weeks or 3 weeks and know that, hey, look, it's unfortunate. You want to say you never lose your spot to injury, but if he comes up and plays great, then, you want to keep him. But you could also tell him, hey, he's hitting 270 down there. He's, popping a couple doubles and he's playing good defense. Like, let's have him play the next 15 games, and maybe it'll be 10 or 15 games. Maybe Sosa plays a little bit, whatever. It's hard to just say only if we see, A, B, or C, depending on what else is going on around, right? Like,
right.
I'd love to say I only want to make the move if and when this is happening. But yeah, there is a way to do it without stunning his growth and making sure you still want to make sure. I think a guy can feel ready for a taste of the major leagues, and not the way that we're talking about where, he's putting up that crazy line I just read and mashing every AAA pitcher he sees. And there's no reason to have this guy face minor league pitchers anymore. Like, we're wasting time, I think there's degrees of it. So, but it just depends what the situation is. It could be an injury. It could be underperformance. It could be, who knows? It could be something small. Maybe it's a week. Maybe a guy doesn't make the IL, but dealing with a hamstring strain or a tired arm or something. There might be an opportunity there. So I think there's a lot of options, but the number one thing, I wouldn't make a move unless there's like, it's absolutely obvious before the end of May.
I agree. I mean, you don't rush it, and if he's forcing the conversation, then hey, you figure it out. And sorry, boys, if you had performed a little bit better, maybe he wouldn't be forcing his way in here. But here he is. I think that you never wish for injury, but their infield has faced a few injuries the last few years, right? Trey Turner played 141 games last year, missed a little bit. 121 the year before, missed significant time with that hamstring injury. Alec Bohm was on the injured list twice last season. There's been plenty of discussion about how much time Bryce Harper has missed, and that would open up a spot at third by moving Alec Bohm over if, God forbid, he missed some time again. So that could be the thing that gets him his first splash. And there's usually a lot less pressure on guys when that happens, right? Like, hey, look, man, it's not necessarily your spot yet, but
right,
go take it. Here, go have fun. Go out there, no pressure. This Bryce Harper's going to come back, and he ain't taking his spot, but go see if you can stick around.
And that's when you do that, you're also not saying like, okay, you really have to show us or prove something or continue some level of performance. It's whenever somebody goes down for a little bit, someone has to play that position for 2 weeks. Right. And, you don't want to put the kid in a bad spot, but hey, you look for, if the person who's going to outperform that guy was already there, they'd already be in that position. So whenever one of your starters or regulars is out for a bit, you usually you're asking someone who's maybe a little less talented to fill that role for a little bit. And this could be less talented or just, less polished in his case, less ready, not as many reps, just younger. And I think there's, again, certainly not wishing for it, but I mean, I don't think there's anybody that plays 162. Kyle Schwarber played 162 games, but he never had to step on the field last year. So, there will be a time where someone's going to hit the injured list. And, I think it depends on how he's playing and what the other options are, where he could be in the mix.
Yeah, it would be interesting. Just a recent example for people. When Mick Abel got called up, when Aaron Nola went on the injured list last season, one of the things that they made sure to tell him was like, hey, this isn't your moment, your call up. Like, we know that it's like, it is a big moment for you, and we get that. Right. But like, when he's ready, you're going back down.
Yep.
So enjoy it while it's here. Enjoy it for what it is, and let some stuff loose, man. And he talked about, those first couple starts, especially his best moments in the majors so far, those were he talked about how that messaging, like, even though it doesn't seem like it should, like you're being told, like, yeah, look, listen, kid, you're getting sent back down. But he said it helped him relax a lot, and he felt like he could make a mistake because he wasn't auditioning for a full-time gig. So, again, you could make the best of a bad situation if that's the way that he makes his debut this year. Not that anybody wishes any injuries, but that would be a nice, easy way for him to find his way onto the major league roster.
Yep.
I think we talked about a lot of guys in kind of what their feel is on the roster. Before we wrap up, John, I just want to do kind of rapid fire. We're not going to go direct into numbers unless you have something in your head, but I wasn't thinking numbers. I'm just thinking general feel for the 4 starters in the infield. What kind of season do you expect from Bryce Harper this season? We'll start with him.
So Bryce Harper, I expect closer to the MVP Bryce Harper than I'm pulling up his stats just to have an idea. I'm not trying to put him, in MVP talk, but he got MVP votes in 3 of the previous 4 seasons before last year. So I think more in the 900 OPS. It's funny. I was like 850. I've always thought his all-star. 844 was his OPS last year. And, there's some talk of
like, down season. Right.
I expect as long as as he's healthy and not hampered by anything, even an injury here and there, if it's something that's not lingering and affecting his swing, like I know he's had a little bit of, I expect back in the 900 and some pop.
I think me too. We've talked about that before, and especially, I mean, not that he's a guy who needs motivation, but he sure as hell uses it. Even the not elite comments aside, I think repping USA on his chest means a lot to him, and I think he's at least going to start the year on fire. I expect another big year from Bryce Harper this season. Let's shift over. Bryson Stott, what are your thoughts? Does he find his way out of the platoon and back to the everyday guy, or are we we know what we're going to get with Bryson Stott? Is it going to be last year, or are we talking about second baseman of the future?
Well, I think I've mentioned this before. Like, a platoon is not necessarily a negative on who the perceived starter is, that he's not good enough and needs a platoon partner. When you have a guy like Edmundo Sosa who slugs 9 or OPS 900 or something against left-handed pitchers, you've got to get that guy in the lineup when a lefty's on the mound. And it's the kind of thing where it's a little bit the same kind of thing. Like, hey, if Miller got a shot, hey, you're only here for the 2.5 weeks until this guy comes back. But if you play with your hair on fire, then and we hear guys talk about it all the time. I want to make them have a tough decision to make.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing, that if Bryson Stott just starts hitting lefties like Kyle Schwarber, you're still going to find, maybe it's not his spot then. Like, that's the job of an athlete, right? I don't want to be taken out of the lineup. Then you have to do the thing that is happening when you're not in the lineup.
Right.
They could find another spot for Sosa. We've seen him in the outfield, whatever. I mean, just put him over a righty. Just give him a shot to shine. We talk often about managers, coaches, their job being to put their players in advantageous situations. That's an advantageous situation for the player and for the team to have Edmundo Sosa in the lineup against a lefty. So, I don't think it's really about Stott like getting out of the platoon or anything. I don't know. I'm looking at his numbers, like the last 3 years, 280, 245, 257 on the batting average, 329, 315, 328 on base. I mean, it honestly feels like somewhere in the middle of that. I think last year was kind of in line with his career. So he batted 257. His career average is 256. 328 on base, career's 318. 391 slugging, career's 383. I think it's going to be a lot of the same. And like you mentioned, that hot streak he had towards the end, it was like over 50 games where he slugged over 500 during this stretch, which is crazy for a guy with his hitting profile. But we also talk about patience and stuff. He's going to be 28 years old this year. I mean, he's 28 now. He's going to play the season as a 28-year-old. Like, I think that's actually the beginning of athletes' physical primes.
Yeah, that's what the traditional sense at least was. Like,
right. I mean, it's possible that this players improve. They work on things,
right.
you know? It's easy for us to sit here and I can pull up Baseball Reference and tell you what a guy's going to do and should do and all the projections and things, but he might improve. But I also think if he provides that baseline level of the last 3 years and his full numbers for last season, I mean, we also talk about the swing where things weren't looking good until that 50 or 60 game stretch at the end. So if there's somewhere, if he ends up, of course you want to see it where if those final year numbers, it kind of looks like that the whole year, you know, the ebbs and flows really, really stand out. But I think if he provides those numbers with his really good defense at second base, that's a really good option at second base.
Yeah, and again, he's not the leadoff hitter. You have Trey Turner to do that. You have Kyle Schwarber who's done it. It's like even if Trey struggles at leadoff for whatever reason, which I don't expect, you have other guys that can go there. You're not putting that pressure on him. He's a glove first guy who can give you some contact, and if he ends up being a 265, 270 hitter, you can't really complain about that. Yep. Trey Turner, you were surprised to realize he was a top 5 MVP finisher, but he did lead the league in hits last season. Do you expect a similar season? Doesn't have to be the same, hitting over 300, leading the league in hits, but do you expect a similar season to Trey Turner for Trey Turner, or do you see a little bit more pop return? Kind of prioritized getting on base and spraying the ball this past year.
It seemed like he enjoyed his season last year. I hope he keeps doing that, and I think those numbers really are in line with how his career. He hit 304 last year as a 297 career hitter. It was his best batting average in 4 years. It was his highest on base percentage in 4 years, and that was also he finished 5th in MVP voting that year. Like I hope he saw the value in that, and not just like these guys also want to have fun, right? Like we know it's a business, it's very competitive, but there's like it's also a game, and to be so robotic about things. I mean, they're robotic in like the training and the muscle memory of certain movements and certain actions, but I'd have to think Trey Turner seemed to have fun playing baseball last year and succeeding the way he did. And being a spark plug for the team in that way. I hope he keeps that up because he's very capable of it.
Yeah, just do that again, please. Right? Yeah. You don't have to lead the league in hits, but if you're hitting damn near 300 and popping 30 plus doubles, I mean, and he took a little bit of a step back when it came to home runs specifically, but you cannot complain about the rest of the results. His job wasn't to hit home runs, and he has multiple 4 seasons of 20 plus homers, another 2 19 homer seasons. Like he has it in his bag. They just didn't need him to do it. And who says that he doesn't pop 24 this season? So I expect another solid season for him. Just like he get maybe not a top 5 MVP finish again, but that's going to depend on the rest of the league, right? If he can perform similar to what he did last season, you're talking about a guy in that conversation every year.
One thing I was surprised at, I was listening or watching one of the spring, I forget if it was today or what day, but they talked about Turner hitting 304 last year. And I knew he was really good. And just some of these, I think over the offseason, you just you lose. And I was like, wow, 300. I was like, that can't happen. I know it happens less across the league, like I said earlier. So you want to guess the last Phillies shortstop to hit 300 in a season?
Oh man. How long ago? The mid 90s.
It's been 50 years. Larry Boa did it in 1975. You know how long it was before then? 1934.
Jeez.
It's only happened 5 times ever that a Phillies shortstop, qualified for the batting title and hit 300. Turner last year, Boa 50 years ago. Dick Bartell 41 years before that. He did it twice, 32 and 34. And then Joe Sullivan did it in 1895. And who knows what even counted as a hit in 1895. So it's
I think they had just made gloves have pockets back then because you weren't allowed to make outs on the bounce.
Yeah. like they threw pitches on the bounce, walks were 5 balls, and strikeouts were 4 strike. There's
Home plate was literally just some dude's plate that he had dinner on from his house.
Yeah, all the fans were wearing suits. Like it was a completely different game and a completely different time. So that jumped out to me. I just think he was really good last year, really effective, and I hope he keeps that up.
And then last but not least, I'm not going to cover JT. I think we kind of talked about our expectations for him offensively. Last but not least, Alec Bohm. What are your thoughts, expectations for him this coming season? Your gut feeling.
Yeah, I think he's a good hitter, and I think he knows that he wants to get a contract from. He's same thing. He's 29 years old.
Even if it's not here, he wants a contract.
Right. I mean, and we can joke about that in other sports and contract year performance and stuff, but that's real. And whether it gets him re-signed here or gets some attention from another team and gets him a nice deal, he has every incentive to have a really good season. And same kind of thing. I mean, he batted his last 4 years, 280, 274, 280, 287. The OPS in that 2022 was 7th. Like his on base was lower and it would drop back down. But I think it's going to be better than last year. It might not be as good as his best year. When he was an all-star in 24, he was 332 on base, 448 slugging, OPS still below 800. But I mean, if he does that, I think that's really successful. I don't think he's going to be I don't think his numbers will be as down as last year. I think he's going to. I really like the changes he made in drawing more walks and getting on base, and that's been a couple years in a row of doing that. He had a little less pop last year. I think if he gets a little of that back, that's a great option to have at third base.
Yeah, to me, and to the pop to me is the doubles. The doubles dropping down was the big thing for me. Like I've always been a big fan. I've always been a big fan of Alec Bohm, and to me, he didn't need to hit. I know that it's weird to think of a 6'5" third baseman not needing to hit 30 home runs, right? But if he's doing everything else, if he's hitting 45 doubles, I'm okay with 15 home runs. Like that's more than acceptable, especially like you're keeping the ball rolling. I expect him to, again, maybe not the same season as 24, but I expect a significant bounce back. And I like the way that Ken Rosenthal wrote this in an article in the offseason. He said, for the first time, there's been rumors about Alec potentially being involved in trade talks, but for the first time, it is 100% true that he's auditioning for 29 other teams this season.
Yep.
And he said, and talking to him, he's very aware of that.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see a big rebound season from him. Maybe not a huge season that puts him in top 20 MVP voting or anything like that, but a significant rebound from what felt like a down year last year for him, I think is in order.
And that's always been used as a negative in the past, but I think that's, for one, it's human nature, and another, let's enjoy it if it's to the Phillies' advantage this year.
Right. Even if it's his last year in red pinstripes, if you can enjoy it on the way out and enjoy that floppy hair running across, making those plays, those coming in plays at third base that he's become so accustomed to, it's enjoy it while it lasts. Enjoy the bromance with him and Brandon Marsh while it lasts too.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question then.
Yes, sir.
We danced around it a little bit, and where people fit defensively if they brought someone in, where the current guys fit defensively anyway. I'll start it. I'm not going to lead into it and have a whole bunch of things. I'll just get right to what I think is the big question that sums it all up. Who's going to be the shortstop on opening day for this team next season?
Next season.
I think we know who it's going to be this year.
I think, oh boy. I would love to have a well-researched answer, but that's going to take too long. I would love to know who the free agents are at third base and shortstop.
Okay.
So
I think if you thought it was going to be Trey Turner, you would have just said Trey Turner, right?
No, I was just, my instinct is that it's going to be Trey Turner.
Oh,
because I think that I don't know who they're going to get at who would be the potential Alec Bohm replacement at third base. It seems like signs have pointed to this may be his last year here. And if they're focusing on keeping Aidan Miller on that side of the ball, they feel comfortable with him being either the shortstop or the third baseman. I wouldn't expect Trey to move to third. So an easy plug and play is take Aidan Miller, put him at third base, keep Trey where he's at. Doesn't mean that 2028 those two guys will stay in those positions, but my instinct is Trey is still the shortstop next season to start the year. What do you think? Who's there?
I think it's going to
be Miller, Stott,
Aidan Miller.
I wanted to say that, but I think knowing that Bohm is likely gone after this year, it's an easy slide to put Miller there instead of figuring out what to do with Stott, filling a hole at third, and putting Miller at short. Even if, although the thing that made me think long and hard about it was what you mentioned. Who was a Keith Law who talked about him? Yeah, that is what made me really mull it over just now. I almost said Trey immediately, but I was like, that was a great note earlier. Doing my best Romo. I don't know,
John. The Phillies' number 4 prospect is a second baseman and shortstop, Arun Escobar.
Yeah,
he's 21 years old. I don't know. He finished in Double A last year. I don't know if he'd be in the mix in the middle infield, to start next season. I don't know enough about him, but I think it's going to be Miller.
Well, only time will tell. Again, we've kind of a theme that we've echoed throughout. Hopefully, the guys on this club make that a tough decision. That's what I'll say. Hopefully, Trey Turner makes that a very difficult decision going into 2027 based on how he plays this year.
Yep.
Johnny, I think we've exhausted everything when it comes to the infield and the catchers. You got anything? I know we kind of blew past the catcher position at the end there for our gut feeling. Anything on the catchers? Who do you think? Marchand or Stubbs? Who you got?
Marchand.
I think it's going to be Marchand too. I think that twofold. One, he's younger, and two, I think that they probably think that they have a higher likelihood of keeping Stubbs, putting him through waivers, as opposed to keeping Marchand, having to put him through waivers. Neither guy has an option, minor league option left. So, well, Johnny, that about wraps things up for our preview for the infield and the catching group here on the Brotherly Glove podcast. Make sure you stay locked in. We still have our outfield and DH preview coming up. We'll talk about the 2 newcomers and, of course, the return of one Kyle Schwarber. We appreciate you guys. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe to the video. Trying to get that count up as high as we can. If you're listening on audio, leave a comment and a review. We appreciate and love you guys for all the support. Follow us on the socials everywhere. It's been on the bottom of the screen. We'll have it in the episode description as well. Again, Johnny, love you, man. Love all the fans out there. Appreciate everybody. You've been listening to the Brotherly Glove podcast, and we'll see you soon in the next one.